Yeah, thank you for joining us here for a moment of analysis. Cincinnati Bearcat podcast. Once again, it's your host here, Tone, with our friend Matt, the one with the statistics and analysis and all the information that I do not have for you guys. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing all right. Also, all things considered, anytime you're coming off a loss, it's always a little bit of a rough Sunday. But you know, regroup, regather, go from there. That's all we can do.
All right, so let's start with you. Just kind of give us your, thoughts in of the game.
Yeah, I think that the Bearcats. The story of the game for me is missed opportunities. They the number one stat that I keep coming back to anytime I look at this game is uh, points per opportunity. So anytime you enter the opponent's 40-yard line going in, so if you're 40 yards to the goal line, it's considered a scoring opportunity. Um, in the Luke Fickle era, the Bearcats have been ruthless in that area. They've averaged generally at least four. Sometimes last year was like 4.5, 4.6 per opportunity, which is outstanding. That's like among the elite of the elite in the sport. Um, they had 9 scoring opportunities yesterday. They scored 24 points. Little rough math, that's like 2.3, which is really, really bad. Um, that's the story of the game for me. Like they had their opportunities. They didn't convert. Arkansas took all their chances. That's why Arkansas won. It's that simple.
No, definitely agree. Same thoughts as you. There were things missed. Um, some things you can kind of, from my perspective, like you can look at it from a coaching standpoint. Some of the young coaches, and some growing pains happening there. But just to me, it was a positive experience. Outside of the loss, because you got to see a team that scratched and clawed their way after not having a great start and try to make it a game, and they did make it a game. There was some defensive miscues that kind of happened um, after Arkansas adjusted, and the defense didn't quite, match those adjustments, and that's okay. Once again, you got young players, and things are going to happen. But it is definitely a positive experience for me to see what I've seen from them and what to expect through the rest of the schedule. Because I don't think there's nothing else that's going to happen in the schedule that's going to match Arkansas. So
Not at all. Nobody else really has the horses to kind of execute that blueprint.
exactly, especially at quarterback. Uh, so just some things that I've seen. Uh, some things I want to go over from yesterday, kind of what I've seen first. Uh, Really quick, I want to touch on the offense. The offensive game plan initially seemed to be kind of open it up a little bit. Don't do nothing too fantastic, nothing too dramatic, right? Just kind of hit your open receivers um, and kind of march your way down the field. That the first time, uh, what was it? That first drive didn't quite work out well. We got down to the red zone, but we ended up, turning over. Um,
Yeah, that was the pick.
yeah, the pick, and then uh, we got into the red zone a few more times and didn't quite work out well. So it, one of the things that I realized is that once some of the players from Arkansas started getting injured, um, they start opening it up and going over the top, which I noticed. And there were some few passes missed. But, it's one of those things where, once again, timing issue. Um, you can't overthrow really fast receivers. And it's one of those things where, you make a couple of those plays. The offense looks great. Ben Bryant is talked about as one of the most amazing quarterbacks ever in the history of football. And I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but I mean, he had 300 something yards even with the miscues that he had. It could have been greatly increased.
Yeah, but that's true of all quarterback. Like that's the thing. Like you don't get credit for getting close.
Right.
It's not horseshoes and hand grenades. It's football. You have to complete those passes when you have them. That's what separates the truly great from the merely good. Um,
Exactly.
I don't know the potential for Bryant to have an all time great season is there. Like to put him up there with like the 2013 Brennan K season, the 2009 Tony Pike / Zach Calera season, and obviously Dez last year. Like he has the potential to perform at that level. That's within him. Um, the consistency has to get better, and it did in the second half. Um, I don't know what was really going on with him in the first half because he was bad. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. He was bad. Um, Missed a lot of open throws behind receivers, not really accurate. The operation of the offense was not crisp and efficient. They had a really good script to start the first quarter, like they always do. Um, but when they got out of that scripted set, he really struggled. He just couldn't really kind of get his get his feet under him, get his legs under him. He couldn't really settle into the game, and that was ultimately for me the kind of the difference in the game. If he played the entire game the way he played the second half, the Bearcats went pretty easily because in the second
Absolutely.
half he did all the things that he did not do in that first half. He converted most of his red zone scoring opportunities. He converted. The single exception to that would be the sequence after the fumble, which we'll get into later, that really was the death note of the game. Like, if you cannot punch it from there, you don't deserve to win, period.
No, I completely agree. Like it's and we can harp on the quarterback all day, right? Until we're blue in the face. I believe Ben Bryant has the capacity to be an outstanding quarterback. The thing, and I was telling people this before. The thing about Ben Bryant is his margin of error is smaller. When your talent is what they expect from you as a quarterback, meaning throw the ball. Your job is to throw. You're not a runner. You're a thrower. Your margin of error is smaller because you have to be good at throwing. Whereas we used to look at Dez and be like, he's not throwing. Well, he's running for 9 yards a clip, so we can deal with that, you know. And so we need somebody who's going to complete those passes, and because he can't, he cannot substitute his passing for running. He doesn't have that skill set. So for me, it's like I believe in Dez, not Dez, but Ben Bryant. I want him to be great. The issue is if those overthrows, if that chemistry doesn't get better, what do you do? Right? How do you compensate for his inability to utilize his strength? Right? And so, for me, it's like I'm here and I'm willing to be patient to see how he does. But we have, from what I've seen yesterday, we have the talent to reload. Right? We have the talent to be a great offense. There are receivers; those wide receivers are running open, unlike anything I've seen. They were gashing the Arkansas DBs. I mean, the DBs could not run with our wide receivers whatsoever. They just couldn't, you know. And it's one of those things where we have to be able to get them the ball because there's too much talent out there for them to be unable to display that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the game really changed when the injuries started to mount up for Arkansas. Like, they do not have a lot of depth in the secondary. When Jalen Catalon went out, like, that's a future NFL player. That's going to be a top 100 NFL draft pick for sure. When he went out and was kind of limited, um, the game changed because they didn't really have that guy who erases mistakes from the front end. Um, you know, and that it could have been the difference in the game, but that happened in like the second quarter where he started to get banged up. And
Right.
UC had their first scoreless half and God knows how long. Like, it's been quite a while.
Right.
Um, and to their credit, they rallied. They scored 24 points in the second half, and they had a much better offensive showing. They were deeply in the red in terms of EPA, expected points added after the first half, like in the negatives for offense, like -10, which
Right.
is not where you want to be. They ended the game from an offensive perspective in the positive. Not a huge number. I think it was like 3.01 or something like that, which is not a huge number, but it's okay. You can win with that. Um, but the points that they left on the field in the kicking game,
The kicking
same old
game.
story.
Right. Right. No, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, so you don't know, never know what you're gonna get from a kicker from what I hear from him when he was at Delaware. He was doing really well, and I don't know if it's just something happens when you walk onto the Cincinnati field and all of a sudden your abilities just go away. I don't know if Just you get
Your
jinxed.
theory is as good as mine.
But if you're a kicker, for this football team, then I don't know what's going to happen. But no, it was, and that's a 9 point swing, right? Because three field goals missed, 9 point swing, lost by seven. You know, what do you do, right?
Yeah, and then you got the two touchdowns that should have been, one to Will Pauling, one to Tyler Scott that were just missed.
Right.
Um,
There's three.
yeah,
He
that
just
that
totally
that's on
got
your quarterback. That's on
right.
quarterback, wide receiver miscommunication with Scott,
Hmm.
but whatever. Like Scott was so open, like you just need to put it on him. I don't care if he's not running the route you're anticipating. Like you should have the awareness to kind of find him because he
Exactly.
beat his man like a drum. And then your kicker leaves 6 points on the field and you lost by seven.
Exactly. And it's like, and one thing, don't want to keep harping on the quarterback because he did really well. 325 yards, two touchdowns, one interception. It's not a bad stat for anybody. If you ask, hey, if somebody told you, hey, your quarterback's gonna have 325 yards and two touchdowns, you'd be like, I will take that. Thank you. That's very nice. I appreciate that. You know. And so I don't want to harp on that, but he did miss Tyler Scott at least 2 to 3 times on open routes. Um, and it happens, right? You need to still have that relationship with your receivers. And even deep routes are some of the hardest balls to throw. That's just the truth. And he just wasn't on. But that offensive line gave time. They were really good. There was the Tunstall sack was the blemish. Honest, the only blemish that really happened. Outside of that, they gave Ben Bryant time that I wasn't really expecting him to have. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah,
So
I mean they protected pretty well.
right,
Obviously, Jake Renfro going out for the season is a huge loss.
exactly.
I thought Gavin Gerhardt stepped in, played really well. A couple of mistakes, a couple of low snaps,
Hmm.
but in terms of his ability to kind of get them into the right, protections, set up the offense, kind of communicate, pass stunts off, all that sort of stuff, he was pretty good. Um, Got to work on getting those snaps up a little bit more, just because and when you have a new quarterback kind of working his way into an offense, you really need to give him every opportunity. And those little operational snafus can really throw a quarterback off.
Hmm.
Um, Not to say that's the reason he had the strip sack, but that was a low snap on that play as well.
Right.
Um, so if you make him kind of take his mind off executing it at the level that he has to kind of find the snap, catch the snap, all that stuff. Like that's just mental energy that's not going where it needs to be, and that can kind of slow you down a little bit. But on that play, even if the snap was perfect, I don't really think the outcome is demonstrably different just because Tulsa
Hmm.
got beat really bad on a really
Yeah.
nice inside rip move.
Yeah. No, and exactly. And I want to go from the O line. Let's go to. I want to go to the tight ends. Uh, I think they were. I think so. It felt like to me that Arkansas was really doing what they could to try to take them out the game more than anybody else. From what I was watching, looked like that Sam Pittman and his coaches were scared of our tight ends, and so a lot of focus was going into the middle of the field for the most part, at least where the tight ends were running. Uh, you had Wiley have a really good catch from behind his back one time, and then he had a couple other catches that worked out for him really well. Uh, you had goodness gracious, Taylor have a couple of good catches. So they stepped up, but those out to the flat tight end plays that you need to have a running quarterback for, because the only reason they was effective when Ritter did them was because he had another element that came to that play, and they was trying to make that happen. I didn't understand why they kept trying to make that happen without the extra element.
Well, yeah, like it's just that if you do not have that running threat, like that
Right,
play, you that's what coaches call a constraint play. Like the
right,
idea is to constrain the defense and make them be where you want them to be, because if they do not keep if they do not keep their leverage correct and they let that tight end leak out, you got a big gain. Or if they don't
right,
keep their leverage correct and they convert it into a quarterback power, like a quarterback sweep, which they would do all the time.
right.
Like that's one of the things I loved about the pandemic season is that because there's nobody in the stands, you could hear Dez converting that play from pass into a run. He would just yell, "Go, go, go, go," which means to Lenny or Wiley, "We're blocking. Like this is a sweep now. You go find
Exactly.
somebody and block them." Um,
Exactly.
but like if you do not have that running threat, that play is kind of dead in the water. You just don't have a shot with it. And they, to their credit, they went away from it.
Hmm.
They ran it a couple of times in the first half. Didn't really in the second half. They started to find other ways to get the tight ends involved, mostly in that mesh concept where you have crossers running across.
Yep.
Um, just kind of basic stuff, but like I think they did a good job of targeting the tight ends. Like I think that's got to be something that they really focus on. Between Lenny and Wiley, they had 9 targets, almost 70 yards and a touchdown. So that's pretty good production from those group. Um, could have had more, but yeah, I thought they had a pretty good game from that spot.
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things where it's going to be continue to be growing pains for the coaches. Uh, Deciding to start a quarterback that's a passing quarterback, right? And being used to having a running quarterback for the last 4 years. Is one of those things you have to adjust. It's going to be an adjustment. Uh, in the running game, because there's a lot of the running game concepts that were based off of RPO or, you know, and that's not that's not been a strength. And so, a lot of those run plays, if there was a pull option, the quarterback would have had a pretty good game. But you have to hand it off and hope for the best. But even with that, our running backs really did really well. Corey Kiner kind of stepped out,
Corey
but he had
Kiner did well. It
yeah,
was Corey Kiner did well. Chuck McClellan had one good run,
yes,
but it was Kiner for the most part who provided most of that lift. Um, Outside of his big 30-yard run, McClellan really didn't do anything. Miles Montgomery had a really rough game. Just was
yeah,
not prepared for the speed or the physicality. I was not impressed with him.
right,
He's young, he's got time, but I think going out of this game, the thought has to be Kiner gets 15 touches minimum every game. Um, and that doesn't mean that there's not a role for these other guys because there
right,
are they have other skill sets. Kiner's not exactly a burner. He's not really a big play guy, but what he is in between the tackles when you want to run power, you want to run, GT counter, inside zone. When you want to keep it between the tackles, he's great in those spaces. Like
mhm,
he finds holes that don't really exist.
yeah. Being small and able to get small is something that he is really good at. Like he can really get between those
And he's got
defenders.
power, man. He's
Yes,
so powerful in that
yes,
lower body.
yes. And just that jump when he jumped over was it the guard or the tackle or whatever into the end
Yeah,
zone? I was like,
into the end zone. Yeah,
all right, all right, 5'9", uh, and and that might be generous, but
he's 5'9".
you think so? Okay,
He's
my
5'9".
God,
He's listed at 6, so he's 5'9". That's how that goes.
okay, okay, but but I will say, as far as running backs go, I think that there's going to be a strong, like, for instance, as a former running backs coach, when I looked at Miles Montgomery, I kept looking at him run the ball, and I was like, he's trying to do something that he don't need to be trying to do, right? I watched him run the ball, and it's like he's trying to break something big. He's trying to break something big. That's not how you break big, right?
No,
And
no.
so,
You get big plays by just taking what's there. Like
exactly.
forcing it never works out for a running back, just like it never works out for a quarterback. You take what's there.
Exactly. And so that's most likely why they pulled him off and then let him back in because the running back coach have to talk to him like, hey, you got to stop because I see what you're doing. You're trying to bounce it to the outside. You're trying to do all these things. That's not your thing. Hey, just run the football where it's supposed to be. And that's what Corey kind of was doing, why they kept putting him back into the game.
Yeah, and like I think Miles will recover, and I think he's going to have a
Yeah,
big game this coming week against
absolutely.
Kennesaw State because
Absolutely.
he's going to be able to do some of the shit that he did in high school that you can get away with. You can
Right.
get away with that. Okay, let's be real. You can get away with that for a lot of the teams on the schedule coming
Yeah.
up. Arkansas is not that team. You just don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I thought Kleiner was really good. Chuck is going to be a good change of pace guy.
Absolutely. That
Um,
will route is going to kill other teams. And for most other teams, that real route that McClellan had would have been a touchdown for
yeah,
against anybody else.
yeah.
That's
I mean, like that was just a really good design, and like that's something else we can really get into now. Like schematically, I thought you could really see the difference between Gino Guidugli calling his own
Right.
book versus calling someone else's book. Um,
Right.
Offensive coordinators, like everyone associates it with calling plays,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a big part of the job, but it's not what they do all year, right?
Right.
Like what they do all year is, kind of install, you know, and they get into the nitty gritty and the philosophical details of like, what do we want to do? What do we want to be? Um, and they showed some really interesting looks this year, like in this game that just not would not have happened under Denbrock because that's not something
Right.
like shifting and motioning the way they did. Um, and that's just like Denbrock motioned quite a bit,
Yeah.
mostly to kind of identify coverage. That's the easiest way to do it because if you send your slot receiver in motion to the other side, guy goes with them, pretty good indicator of man.
Mm-hmm.
If they just bump and shift, that's going to be zone 90%
Yep.
of the time. This is college. There's very limited, on-field instruction time. We're talking like 20
Right.
hours a week. That's all you
Right.
got. So you need to the ability to kind of manipulate defenses was something that we've not really seen before. And like a perfect example of that was on the Kinder touchdown run, where they line up in 12 personnel. So they have two tight ends and a running back,
Mm-hmm.
two wide receivers on the opposite side. That's a balanced formation because you have two receivers on both sides of the line. You put your receivers into the boundary, pretty standard stuff. And then they flip the wing alignment to the boundary. So now you have your wing alignment with your two tight ends plus your two receivers all on the same side of the field.
Right.
And you could see Arkansas frantically like checking out of stuff, signaling. Nobody knew what was supposed to happen because you violated like a basic rule of football. Like you don't do that. You don't put all your receivers into the boundary.
Right.
And that kind of sets off alarm bells for defensive coordinators and defensive players. It's like something's weird happened. Something like we got to be ready for something crazy because this is like a basic norm that you do not do.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No.
And then
When
they
I seen
just
that,
run
yeah.
inside zone.
When I seen that, I
All
said,
all that all the,
well, what?
all that window dressing inside zone.
Right. No, I'm telling
And
you, when
it
I
was
seen that,
effective because they had three guys who were not prepared for the play to start. Because you did this weird thing that has definitely not been on film. Guarantee that did not come up in prep week.
so I've designed plays, and I can tell you, I've never designed a play like that with 100% certainty without having to look at the playbook. Because you don't do that. It's the spacing issue, right? It's and how do you get the people to where you want them to go if you have everybody bunched up in the same place? That's not. You always want space when you create plays, especially when you think might be a pass. Even in run plays, you need your running back to have space, right? So that they can operate.
Oh yeah, or if you're looking for that,
Yeah,
like when you see them look like that, you're like, oh, they're gonna
right,
run everybody. Like they're gonna be running everybody off. It's like this is the
right.
red zone, so it's gonna be like mesh and like long shallow
Exactly,
crosses all the way across, and they're gonna
exactly,
free up one guy.
exactly.
The guy on the
Yep.
inside is probably gonna free out and just kind of sneak to the side.
Then
No,
don't
I
read.
mean like that's it looks so weird. They
Right,
have no idea what's coming.
right.
And they did that two or three times in that game
Hmm.
where they're just showing stuff they'd never shown before in the Luke Fickle era.
Absolutely.
In
And
terms of alignment and personnel deployment,
mhm.
Trey Tucker as running back, cool. I'll sign up
Trey
for that.
Tucker should have been at running back. Like not playing all the time, but they should have been using those out of the slot to the running back position. Moving safeties around, moving linebackers around, make them unsure what's about to happen. Are they going to do a wheel route? Are they going to hand it off to him? Like that should have been a wrinkle, right? Um, I agree. Like that Trey Tucker running back, I was excited. I'm not gonna lie. I jumped up like, yes, finally. um,
Yeah, I mean, like they have weapons. I think they're going to do a better job of deployment.
yep.
In terms of play selection, it's something that I've harped on for a very long time. Is you know, it from a statistical perspective, the worst thing you can do on first down is run the ball. Period. I don't care
Right.
how good you are at it.
I agree.
The average pass is 7 yards. The average run is 4.5. It has been that way in college football for the last 20 years.
No, I
So
don't
that
agree.
gives you second and 3 if you complete
Mhm.
the average pass.
No, yeah, no, I'm with you. I was big on passing. I'm big on passing the first down, so I'm with you. I
Yeah.
always
So
get
like I
first
just
down.
think the approach is so much more. I like the approach to the offense a lot better with Gino versus anybody else. And like I saw a
Yeah,
lot of people who were, kind of bitching about whatever, like thinking that he wasn't like really ready for this game. It's like if you're thinking that UC did not have a good plan on offense,
yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. Did they execute it well? No.
no,
No. Was the plan the problem? No.
no,
Because they had guys open all the time. They found their matchups. They hunted their matchups very well. Like third down, Will Pauling, come on down, man. This is going to be where you live.
yes, yes. Third down. I wanted to talk about third down. That's what I wanted to talk about. Outside of a small clip of the game, they actually third and manageable was almost a gimme for this team. And you didn't see that with Denbrock. If it was anything more than 3rd and 5 with Denbrock, it was almost like you might as well get the punter ready.
Yeah,
In this game, between Ben Bryant did really good on third down, and the coaches did really good calling plays on third down, and that made me really excited. If you can get out of third and manageable, that's going to allow good things to happen.
yeah, and I think it's not just that they were good on first and second down.
Mhm.
It's more that when they got to third downs, because like low key last year, third down was a problem. They were
Yeah,
not good on third down. Like they were like four, especially in the big games. Like they were terrible on third down against Houston, against
yeah,
against Alabama, against Notre Dame. They were bad.
hmm
Like those 3 games, they were probably like 30% or worse.
and that's why I was excited.
And the biggest reason why is that in those spots, they are hunting matchups the way you need to.
Hmm.
Um, you're hunting Wiley, you're hunting Will Pauling. Um, Trey Scott isn't really, or Trey Scott, Trey Tucker is not really that guy just
Right.
because he's so fast that you really need him to kind of take the top off.
Hmm.
But when you want to in certain spots, he can work underneath. He's just better doing other stuff. But I think
Right.
Will Pauling is going to be a huge factor for this offense going forward.
No, I absolutely agree. I think Will Pauling looked really good. Um, and I'm very excited about this offense coming up. I think it's going to be. I think and I'm don't quote me on this, but next game because they're playing Kennesaw, I believe the first team offense is going to be off by halftime. If they execute the way that I think they can, they should be off the field by halftime. This offense should. Um, we gonna and that's just how I feel. We gonna about to get into the defense in a moment here because the defense had a Jekyll and Hyde experience situation this game. We can start off with the first. Let's break this off in halves. So first half defense, I enjoyed watching them. Uh, they were really good. You have your Ivan Pace who was dominating all game, but in the first half he did well. Um, I'm gonna say this. I'm not gonna start off with any certain section of a position on the field, but I will say that Shepard, who we were talking about last show, where we'll see what goes on. He he was probably the best DB on the field.
He played a hell of a game.
Um, and it was unexpected because everybody Bush, Hicks, and Hicks did what Hicks do, right? Hicks gonna do what he does. He kept it from getting too bad over top. Um, except when they brought him down. When they brought Hicks down into the box, or when he wasn't in the game, is when things kind of fell apart. So the question is, I don't know if they're gonna be able to take out Hicks too many times. And
No, I don't think he's going to be seeing the bench very often.
right,
You just can't really lose his, for lack of a better word, institutional knowledge. Like
right,
he has been here a very, very long time.
mhm,
He's been playing relevant football since 2019. Like
right,
he's been here a while. Um, when he's not on the field, like there's a demonstrable difference in how they play. And
mhm,
it's really like, it's no offense to Will Adams, but it's not for you, man. Like that spot, they can't really afford any sort of drop off just
right,
because the way they structure the defense, that spot is so incredibly important. Um, and like the safety play in general was okay. I don't think it was
Mm-hmm.
great. Um, you know, Brian Threats, Doodle, put his face mask into a fan if you ask him to, but like he's got to learn to control a little bit better because of the way that UC is structured defensively. Like they try to build in these half layers into the run fits
Mm-hmm.
where it's kind of fill and replace. So Deshaun Pace replaces whoever the middle linebacker who has that three technique responsibility if they're not playing in the three,
Right.
and then whoever is that interior safety, it's usually Threats, has to step up behind that and make those plays. And you can really tell the impact that Brian Cook had last year
Mm-hmm.
in this game because those plays were there to be made that Cook always made
Right.
and Threats didn't.
Right. Now you wonder, did threats start because he was more of a Brian Cooks type of personality, meaning he's willing to stick his head into anything at any moment in time and give his body away. You know, not saying that he has the same type of mental ability, right? Not saying that he has the same type of control that Brian, because the dude what Brian Cook has is a large amount. There's a lot of control, as well as a lot of being able to mentally process what's going on around you really fast.
Yeah,
Um,
I,
and
I
you
think
talk
it's
about, go ahead.
I think it's that he has the ability to kind of process, but he's also willing to put his face in there,
Right,
and that's like you have to be willing to kind of go in there and make those plays. And the guy,
right,
like his backup is Amarion Smith, same
right,
deal.
right.
He's bigger, faster. Well, he might not be faster, but he's bigger, so he
Mm-hmm.
can bring a little bit more thunder when he's there. But
Right,
even that, like on the big play to Rocket Sanders on that big run, that 37-yarder, like who actually got him out of bounds? Who prevented the touchdown? It was Brian Threats launching
right,
himself from fucking 3 yards away and
right,
hammering him in the thighs. That's what
right,
did it.
right.
Uh, and like he had the biggest hit of the game. It just happened to be there was that one, and there was also the one where he killed Sammy Anderson. I don't know
Yeah,
what it is
yeah.
about Sammy Anderson, but he stays getting demolished by his teammates.
Maybe he's always in the wrong space at the wrong time. But you got to look at it like, for instance, like Jacob Dingle. Is Jacob Dingle more is he better at understanding like just being in the space of where he need to be, but maybe don't put his head in the fan as much as somebody else would, right? Maybe he's not so ready to give his body away, and so they like we kind of need somebody who, because you got to think like it was such a close race between them two as far as we know, right? And but Threats got the nod, but Jacob played a little bit, but he didn't play a lot, so he has one tackle, so they at least put him in because maybe that's what they were thinking. Um, because at one point the safeties were really giving up the game for us. That touchdown to Hassel, what's his name?
Hazelwood.
Hazelwood. Omarion was in the right place, and if you look at that play, you would imagine, oh, they're going over top, so I need to be there. But you know, uh, Jefferson threw a hell of a ball. He brilliantly threw the ball too short, and that
Yeah, like that's one of those plays where to the uninitiated, it's like, oh,
right,
that receiver made a hell of a play. It's like, oh no, that looks spectacular from the receiver, but it's designed to
right,
because how the defense is going to try to leverage that play. So you got
right,
two guys with a third arriving quickly
right,
into the scene. They're all expecting it to go over the top. If you throw it
right.
short to the goal line versus throwing it to the pylon,
Mm-hmm.
they are going to overplay that and they're going to overrun that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, UC fans saw all last year without Pierce. Like that was
Right,
his and Dez's bread and butter. They loved the back shoulder fade. And that wasn't exactly a back shoulder fade, but it was definitely intentionally underthrown.
right.
And that's the kind of thing that you can do. And I get that Hazelwood's new, um, but like they've clearly repped that a ton this summer.
Right. You know, and for but still for Jefferson to recognize that that's what needs to happen, right, was an amazing, recognition point from him.
Yeah, he's a really fucking good quarterback.
Right. Right.
I for the life of me, I do not understand the Will Levis hype.
Right.
Like everyone's talking about this guy like he's the second best quarterback in that league. And I'm like, he's not even like the seventh. Like he's not that good. I take Hendon Hooker over him. I take Bryce Young over him. I take Stetson Bennett. Now Stetson Bennett is like an average dude.
Yeah.
He's going to be going professional in something other than sports to
Right.
use the NCAA's favorite line. Um, but yeah, like I take him over Will Levis for sure. KJ Jefferson for sure.
Oh,
Hendon Hooker
absolutely.
for sure.
Yes.
Like
No, I agree with you.
there's so much about Jefferson that I like. And you know, this offense that he plays in kind of really suits his style because he
Mhm.
is it's an offense that takes exactly what you give them
Yep.
and they obligingly. It's like, oh, you're going to give us this? Fine, we'll
Mhm.
take this. We don't care what it is. Our entire offense is set up on we are going to make you make decisions in the structure of your defense, and no defense is perfect. No
Right.
defense is without fault. There's always going to be cracks and crevices that you can exploit.
Mhm.
And the key is knowing where they are and where they present themselves against all the various schemes that you can find. And you know, like that's what I love about football. It's like there's endless variability, but in terms of actual structures, like nothing has really changed in football in like 20 years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Like when the 3-3-5 was invented, when Memphis went on the road and beat USC,
Mhm.
this was back in the early 90s. That
Yeah.
was the first time anyone
So they
really
had it before West Virginia? Oh, I did not know
yes.
that. Okay.
Yeah, it was invented there, but it wasn't really kind of West Virginia is what put it on the map
Got you.
schematically because it wasn't kind of a one-off thing.
Right.
Like Memphis did it because they're Memphis. And this is not like current Memphis. This is like Memphis when they were a fucking
Memphis
tire
First.
fire.
Right.
For 80 years. They were
Right.
horrible.
Right.
And they went on the road and they beat USC in the Coliseum by
Mm.
playing a defense that no one had ever seen before.
Yo.
So like
Yeah.
that's the last major defensive innovation and
Mhm.
like there's only so many ways you can structure a defense. Are you going to play middle of the field open or closed?
Right.
It's the
Yep.
number one question. That's the choice you have to make. And UC plays it closed.
I'm a seven linebackers. That's how I'm play. No. Um, but people was complaining about the 3-3-5 that UC was playing. I had no issues with it. Here's why. Um, Dante Corleone and Juwan Briggs did what they were supposed to do. Let me say that again. Dante Corleone and Juwan Briggs did what they needed to do. They occupied the center, and
Yep.
there was no movement.
Yep.
The center could not move them. So they did their job. The runs up the middle were not that great. The ones that were was more off tackle, off guard type runs, right?
Correct.
It wasn't straight up the middle. Now, the issue that we coming into is the linebackers, the ones that we thought were going to be amazing, really didn't show up in this game. Let me read something off to you. So, Wilson Huber had 5 tackles. He probably missed more than that. Okay. uh, Ivan Pace had 12. Ivan Pace, followed by Jaquan Shepard, has 9. Jaheim Thomas had 7. You have 7, and then the next one's Brian Threats. So what you have is the cornerback had the second most tackles on the team, when in reality it probably should have been another linebacker. The way they were playing, the way that this team was playing, is probably should have been another linebacker that had the second most tackles. You had Deshaun Pace with only 3. You had Ty Van Fossen with only 4. Uh, Goodness gracious. And that's where we kind of round off at. Now here's the thing I noticed about the linebackers. They were seemed to be a step slow and somewhat out of place. Everybody, Ivan Pace was playing faster than everybody else, literally. He was reading the offense better than anybody else, and he only been here a year. He's seen a lot of football. He probably seen more football than everybody else on that defense. I get it,
Correct.
but
At
um,
least among the linebackers. Like
on the
he's
line,
been a regular first line player for Miami for 3 years.
right?
Like he started as a freshman. Like he has played a lot of football.
Mm-hmm,
Wilson Huber played a lot last year, but it was situational. It wasn't an
mm-hmm,
every down thing. Like he was the third down specialist. You know, Jaheim Thomas, incredibly talented. He's not played a lot of football.
Right.
Like I the biggest thing for me is they did not play with great leverage.
No.
And what I mean by leverage is like this defense has been for the entirety of the Luke Fickell era since 2000, since the first season, has been known for the way that they structure the defense to put the ball where they want the ball to be. The ball does not go where they don't want it to do
Right.
because everybody knows exactly based on what the offense is doing, what their personnel is, what they're likely to run situationally. Like they know more or less where they want to go and what they want to do, and they structure the defense and their movements to take that away.
Right.
And the way that you do that is you play with good leverage. And by leverage, I mean playing on the right side of the offense to force it back into the rest of the field where all your guys are coming. Right. And it's usually one guy who has to maintain that leverage. And there were numerous times where they did not have that leverage that you need. Part of that is KJ Jefferson is a really good running quarterback. He requires resources to be devoted to stopping him in the run. So you're going to have guys who are going to have kind of split responsibilities where they have to pay attention to him and the running back. But there were also like simple mistakes that were made. Like the one that really sticks out to me is when they were trying to do that double pass where they got in the backup quarterback, they threw it to him. So UC had two guys in the space.
Yeah, broke down. Yeah,
they were more or less where they should be, except for. So you have your first defender who's engaging with the receiver who's trying to block him. He has the correct leverage. He is playing on the high side of his shoulder so that he cannot get that way.
Yep.
Correct. And then Van Fossen makes the mistake of not acknowledging the leverage that guy is playing with and tries to undercut the block. He has to go over it. Like you never go under a block. If you go under a block, you're going to get beat because it doesn't matter, how fast you are. Unless you're fucking Tyreek Hill, you're not going to run anything down from that position. That's just not how it works because it's just a more direct path to go under and kind of try to cut him off at the point. But he went under instead of going over. And it's like, to his credit, Hornsby, I don't think it's Hornsby. What's his name?
Who was it? The backup quarterback?
It's Malik something. Regardless, he sees it and just books it. Straight goes, 20-yard run on what was intended to be a shot, a double play. Malik Hornsby. It's intended to be a shot play, kind of the dagger.
Right.
And UC, to their credit, doesn't give up the dagger, but because they play with poor leverage at the point of attack, they give up a big gain. And there were, 4 or 5 plays where that happened, where they just had bad leverage and bad leverage against a team like Arkansas with their physicality and their natural talent. Like that's just a bad place to be.
But that's kind of a example of impatience, right? You see the quarterback, he has nowhere to go, he's standing there, and you're like, I'm gonna get him. Like, no, that's not your place at that time, right? Like, but you look at this game and you see one thing I'm starting to realize is that these are linebackers that with our 2 linebackers from last year being gone.
DeBlanco and Beavers.
The Broncos and Beavers allowed, from what I see, allowed Van Fossen and Pace to play recklessly. Those 2 guys allowed Pace and Van Fossen play recklessly. And with those 2 gone, who were there to shore up everything else, those 2 always kept things where they're supposed to be, which allowed everybody else to kind of go crazy. Right? And with them being gone, you can see the holes in Van Fossen and Pace game to me, because you no longer have that calming pieces there to where they're always going to be in the right place. Beavers and the Blancos always going to be in the right place in this defense. They know where they're going to be. The question is, are you going to make sure that everything else get cleaned up?
See, but
Pace.
I disagree with that. So,
Okay.
and the reason I disagree with it is
Go ahead.
the entire that dollar sniper position
Hmm.
was invented for Jarrell White, right?
Right.
Like that was the prototype.
Yeah.
I mean, the first iteration was Malik Clements, who was a former safety,
And he played
but
that safety role pretty well.
he didn't really fit the role too well because
Right.
he wasn't a great inbox player.
Hmm.
Jarrell White was perfect for that role because he's an undersized tweener, just a great football player. Like
Right.
they unleashed him by just saying, "Hey, go attack whatever
Right.
you see."
Right.
Right? Like you have your own responsibility within the structure of this team,
Hmm.
within the structure of this defense that is special to you, and you alone are allowed to freelance and make shit up. And that only works if the other guys play their roles,
Right.
fill the gaps,
Hmm.
maintain leverage, do all
Yeah.
the little shit that allows you to have one guy who just kind of does what he does.
Right.
Right. So to me, it's not as much on Pace and Van Fossen as it
Mhm.
is on Jaheim Thomas and Will Huber.
And that's what I meant though. That's what I was getting into because the Blanco and Beavers are doing their job. We have an issue where Huber and Jaheim Thomas was out of place often, which
Yeah.
allowed their jobs to be hard. It made their jobs harder. They didn't have that security blanket of the Blanco Beavers to know they're going to be there, and all I got to do is play football.
Yeah.
And so then to me, it looked like Van Fossen and Pace start trying to do too much because their job is to play football. Those pieces are out of place now, so I need to go cover.
I
And
got you.
now they're out of place, and it's like everybody's out of place now. Like everybody is not. And to me, like I was saying also to somebody, Ivan Pace, the defense looked better when Ivan Pace was in the middle. No, nothing to Will Huber. There's nothing against Will Huber. But when they put Ivan Pace in middle linebacker the few times they did, that defense seems to come together better. And then they'll put
Well,
Will.
he's so much better at shifting through the trash than
Right,
Will is.
right.
Will's a big, long dude. Like
Hmm.
he's 6'4" plus, 250 plus. Um, he's not really able to compress the way that
Hmm.
Ivan Pace is because Ivan Pace comes pre-compressed.
Right.
Like there's not, he doesn't have to like get small and shifty and kind of get into these, and fill these zones. Like he's already like he has that advantage because he's so squat
Hmm.
and thick and just built for that kind of he's built for that environment more than Will Huber is.
Right.
Will Huber was used really effectively last year on those third downs as just a
Hmm.
fucking hellraiser.
Yeah.
Like I am going to unleash the gates of hell myself personally. That's all I'm
Right.
going to do. And he played that role really well. This is a different role. It requires a different thing. And DeBlanco looked like a crazy person sometimes
Hmm.
because you kind of have to when your job is to go headbutt a 300-pounder every single snap.
Right.
But he was able to do that with a measure of control that Will
Right.
Huber is going to have to learn.
Right.
And if anything, I think Will Huber erred too much on the side of caution.
Hmm.
And a slow mind equals slow feet. He
Exactly.
was thinking too much.
Yep.
Um, that was why he was not particularly effective in this game. Um, he's got time, and if he can't figure it out, the Bearcats have options. Like that's
Yeah.
just if nothing else, he can go back to that third down Hellraiser role and play
Hmm.
it to a fucking T again. That's perfectly fine. Like
Right.
he gets the opportunity. He didn't play really well in this game. He'll get more opportunities, but he's got to up the level of performance because
Absolutely.
Pace is coming for that job. Like that's
Yes. Yes.
whether it's his or whether it's Jaheim's. Like he's coming for somebody's start.
And we need somebody there for when we play UCF because UCF seen this game and was like, if these linebackers keep playing like this, we can run our quarterback like we want to run. Like, yeah,
Yes, like that is the only game on the schedule that gives
right,
me some pause for concern at
yeah,
this point
yeah,
because they have a fairly good offensive line. Like I don't think
hmm,
it's better than UC's. I think it's probably the second best group in the conference. Um, but the way that their scheme works, you know, that is very similar. It's like it's on the same tree as what Arkansas does.
right,
Gus literally wrote the book on the hurry up no huddle offense,
Hmm.
Literally wrote the book. Like you can find it on Amazon. You can give him $1 in royalties. I'm sure he's in dire need of that dollar.
Right.
Um, and it's a really interesting treat, kind of pamphlet on this concept of football that he kind of invented. The way that he married, hurry up, no huddle concepts with a spread power attack. That was completely different to what anybody else was doing in football at the time. Like he kind of changed football.
No, absolutely. And like I'm not completely like crazy worried about the game because here's the truth. Also, I don't think that there's nobody on their defense can stop our offense. So if nothing else, it's gonna be a high scoring game. Um,
Yeah, I anticipate that.
but I will say, and from that, talk about UCF. I'm thinking about the rest of this season. My hopes, my dreams, my ambitions have not been washed away by this loss. And if nothing else, I've actually gotten more excited about this season outside of this Arkansas game because seeing what the receivers can do and knowing that I don't think there's too many other teams that have the talent in the secondary that Arkansas do. The Arkansas secondary ain't that great, but they are getting better players than
Yeah,
most teams in the AAC are getting as far as
for sure.
secondary goes. And for this tight end group and this receiver group to abuse their secondary the way they did, should yield great results. And there's not going to be another D line as good as Arkansas. Not as big and powerful and as strong as theirs. You might have a little bit more quickness here and there because they don't have a terrible amount of quickness. But there's not going to
No,
be.
I mean like Houston. If you get to the title game and they get there, which they looked kind of shaky
Yeah.
for most of the day, Houston would be close. I think UCF has a pretty good. I think UCF. I think UCF's defense is better than you give it credit for. I think
Okay.
Williams is a really good defensive coordinator, and they made great strides last year. Um, they just could not handle the Bearcats up front
Right.
with their defensive line, and I would still be concerned about that if I'm a UCF fan. Um, they beat the fuck out of South Carolina State. Congratulations.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't see anything.
that's not really you're not that is not relevant at all. Just like what the Bearcats do to Kennesaw State this weekend is not going to be relevant in
It's
any
not.
way to anything for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Um, Kennesaw State is a good program. They, they're like top 20 in S&P, Bill
Tune
Connolly's
up for
metric
Navy.
in the FCS. But they lost to Samford,
Right.
who's not a particularly good FCS team. Like
Yeah.
Samford's not a playoff level FCS team, and they
Right.
lost this weekend. So they might not be as good as expected, but it's gonna suck to play them
Yeah.
because they are flex bone, triple option.
Mhm.
We're gonna compress the game. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make you have 8-9 possessions.
Right.
We're gonna slow it down. Like that's the kind of game that they're gonna try to play. But they just don't have a hope in hell of holding up defensively. Um, so yeah, like UC is not going to have a ton of possessions, but they'll probably score on 7-8 drives out of 10, whatever it ends up being. So yeah, like I anticipate that to be a pretty comprehensive game. I don't anticipate a massive score line just because you're playing an option team, so possessions are going to be limited. Therefore, points are going to be limited.
Right. I will say, and looking at the defensive line, when you look at Kennesaw State, even UC's this defensive line is much better created to stop that option type of game. It kind of uh, limits what can be done in the middle of the field due to the size and the power that exists there in the run game. Um, and that makes me excited about the game against Tulsa and the game against Navy. And, because we don't have to worry about what we worried about last year as much. It's somebody who's going to clog up that middle the way that it needs to be, as long as the linebackers do what they need to do.
Yeah, and like having Briggs and Corleone, I mean, like that is such a fucking nightmare
When they
for
went
so
forward
many
down, I was like,
lines.
oh,
And I'm I'm not gonna lie, like I got a full man crush on Dante Corleone. He's fucking awesome. He is the best. I can't wait for him to play more than 20 snaps a game, and we're getting to that point. Um, like you're still looking for that. I mean, way more Justin Watley than I anticipated yesterday.
yes.
He probably got 20, 25 snaps. I was not anticipating him getting more than, 10, 11. So that was encouraging, and he played pretty well. Um, but yeah, like the difference for this team and this program relative to the rest of the American Athletic Conference
Mm-hmm.
is up front on both
Yeah.
sides. And, like until I hear otherwise, like the same rules apply. Can you block them? You know, can you block UC? Can you get off
Mm-hmm.
UC's blocks? Simple, basic question.
Absolutely.
Most of the teams in this conference, the answer for that is going to be no. There are a couple where it
Yeah.
will be yes, but for the most part, those lines have dominated for the last couple of years.
Imagine being a center that has to be first. You're going against Briggs, and then Corleone come on. You like, yeah, and they just keep rotating in and out, and you like, man, I can't, coach. I don't want to do this no more.
Yeah, and like Arkansas has a really good offensive line,
Right.
and they're doubling Corleone, and he's
Yeah.
just like, all right,
So
fine, I'll
he's just
stand
throwing
here,
it. Yeah. But he
just
also
just just bowing up, getting the back ready.
there was one play where he just kind of threw the offensive lineman off of him and got that tackle at the middle, and it was like he just threw an SEC player. He just threw them off of him. But
Yeah, like he is. It's really early, and he's
yeah,
got a long way to go.
yeah,
But like the raw tools, like that is NFL potential. Does he get there?
absolutely.
We'll see. But
His
like that
leadership. Yeah.
combination of yes, it's that combination of strength and like lateral quickness is
Hmm.
kind of hard to. It's very well compensated. I'll put it that way.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
if he can continue to put it together, his physicality is going to give him the opportunity to make a lot of money. He just needs to kind of keep progressing and keep getting better. But that talent is, you know, there's, you can see why the coaches were salivating about him all off
Yes,
season and the
yes.
way that he kind of came up and kind of performed in the off season. He put in the work and he's going to get the opportunities.
Yeah, when he got that 12 men on the field penalty on us though, when he couldn't get off the field fast enough, I was like, okay, yeah, you gotta get him in and shake him a
Well,
little bit.
Arkansas does that to somebody once a game.
No, but it was good. Like I said, I'm excited about what the future holds for this team. 0-1 is not where we wanted to be, but is where we are. We fought a hell of a game. We were down by 14 coming out of the halftime, and they only won by 7 points. If for a lot of people, they rather get blown out than lose close. But for me, knowing that they was going against Arkansas, should be a pretty good SEC team. Only losing by 7 points and having an opportunity to come back and win is a huge, huge thing for me, and I see positive things in the future.
Yeah, it was the fight in the second half for sure
Right.
because it's very easy in this game, and you see it every week. You'll see a team
Hmm.
who has a great plan, who has their shots, and they don't take them in the first half, and then they just fold
Yep.
because it did not go the way that they anticipated to, and they got so deflated by the fact that they were so close that they just kind of
Mhm.
the game is over at that point, right? That's why a lot of teams, a lot of average teams, if the script doesn't go right, it can go really bad
Yeah,
really quickly.
yeah.
And that is not something that has ever defined this team, even when they were fucking horrible in 2017.
Hmm.
You know, they should have lost the Miami streak that year.
Yeah, no, them winning that
Thank you,
game,
Chuck Martin.
yeah, them winning that game. I know everybody was like, but that was a rough. But you can see Fickle all over this team. And
Yeah.
yesterday was the first time I ever seen Fickle actually cuss, and turn red. He actually literally turned red, and I was like he was saying some bad stuff when he put the paper over his mouth. Like it was like,
Yeah.
okay, I never seen Fickle
He
quite like this.
he's a rather calm man. Um, publicly.
Right,
Like
right,
I'm sure behind the scenes is a different story.
right,
Um, like the motto for the year is FE squared, right?
right,
Iron sharpens iron.
right.
What do the letters FEE mean? Fuck everybody else.
Yeah,
That's straight from the
yeah,
coach's mouth. Like
yeah,
that's the motto for this year.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's all you really need to know about him.
But you're seeing Fick all over this team. You see Fick handprints in the way that he view his teams ought to be all over his team. No matter how many mistakes they made, they kept going in and they kept trying as hard as they could. They mess up, they just go back in and try again. And Fickle stayed behind them even when it came to Ben Bryant messing up through the whole first half. It could have been easy to put Evan Prater in. You know you would have got some out of him because he can run the ball. Him running the ball would have done something, right? But you keep Bryant in because you believe something happened, and I believe in this team. And we'll see how the rest of this season go. We got Kennesaw State coming up next week. It should be something fun to watch for about 2 quarters, and then you can go, do what else you need to do for the day.
I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if it's kind of close at the half, just because
Mhm.
it's the possession. It's the
Yeah,
numbers game.
right.
Like if Kennesaw has a really good game plan, and they show you see a whole bunch of stuff that they haven't seen on film, which is
Hmm.
what everybody did to them last year, which is why they had so many slow starts. Um, but like if you allow an option team to do that, and you allow them to have a 7, 8, 9 minute drive, like then you're talking about like 4 possessions and a half.
That's true. That's true.
So like that possibility is always there with an option team, where
Mhm.
they hit on the one drive and it takes 10 minutes,
That's true. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you're suddenly in a 9 possession game and an 8 possession game, and it's those moments where it's just like you're you're guaranteed to look worse than you actually played, just
Hmm.
because people are going to see the score and they're going to see the name, and that's all they're going to see, because
Yeah.
nobody else, like no one else other than Kennesaw State and UC fans, will be watching this game.
Yeah. Absolutely. And but it's gonna be an opportunity to see really for us. This next game is really going to be us, our ability to see the Ben Bryant and the receivers' timing and chemistry get better. Have they been working on that? Can he now hit those deep throws? Because they're going to go for him because Kennesaw State literally do not have a DB that can cover, not even our tight ends, most likely. So, it's one of those things where it should be a opportunity to see how that come along, see if they can finally get that established. This one of those games for us. The week after that, what is it? Miami and then Indiana.
Yeah, it's Kennesaw, Miami, Indiana.
All right. So, then we can see, how it goes in Indiana. It's almost like it's slowly, up in the ante type thing where it's like, slowly get better and better and better. And then you can see with the out, the end all once, they get past their tune up games. But I'm excited about those games and we'll see how it goes along. Once again, I'm Tony. This is Matt. And we will be back with you guys, on our next episode. Thank you for listening.
Peace.
All right. So, yeah, yeah, that was good. Um, we'll see
All
what
right, so
next
I'm
weekend looks like.
traveling. Yeah, I'm traveling next weekend.
Okay.
I haven't booked my flight out, but
Okay.
hopefully I will be out of Tulsa on Friday. But
Ready. No, if nothing else, I'm thinking either Monday or Tuesday. If nothing else, because I got to see what Sunday looks like too next week.
okay.
Um, we just go from there.
All right, man. Sounds like a
All right.
plan.
Yep. Later.
All right, peace.